Let's go straight to our next guest, who is Robert Bates. He's Research Director at the Centre for Migration Control. Good morning to you.
Morning, Julia. Thanks for having me.
Well, thanks so much for joining us. Well, of course, 801 migrants crossed the English Channel on Saturday, we are told. A total of 292 across the Channel on 6 boats yesterday. We are talking, the usual sort of scale of boats coming across. And no wonder, of course, 8 people drowning in the Channel as well over the weekend, tragically, as a result of these people smuggling business. No wonder then that Keir Starmer's travelled to Italy today to meet with Giorgia Meloni, the Italian Prime Minister, to find out how she and her government have been able to actually tackle the migration crisis. They virtually halved the number of people coming into Italy over the last year. What do you expect that he's going to learn?
Well, I'd imagine he'd hear actually quite sound proposals put forward by Meloni. She's been at the forefront of European efforts to tackle the illegal migration crisis. The question is whether he will actually listen and take on board any of the advice that he has given, and I would argue that's highly unlikely. I think ultimately this trip is just a gimmick to kind of quell concerns that are emerging in the public that the Labour Party's plan to smash the gangs simply isn't working. And let's not forget that the Italian plan where they extract those that have entered their country illegally to Albania isn't a deportation plan in the way that the Rwanda scheme was. No. It's purely an offshoring measure. So even if you were to take on wholesale what it has been proposed, it wouldn't actually go as far as what the Conservative measures were. But this is
no. Can I just clarify for people? So in Italy, basically, they're saying you don't dock here in Italy. You go to Albania. You're processed there. But then, if you are granted asylum, then you come back to Italy. Whereas Rwanda, you're going to be processed there. Even if you're granted asylum, you stay in Rwanda.
That's it. That's spot on. Yeah.
I've had to talk about this a lot over the last couple of years.
Yeah, you're an expert. No, you should come and join us. Britain has a horrible track record in the last few years of how many applications we actually do grant asylum applications to as well. It's 79%. Some years. So
and way higher than other European countries, and often for people who've already been turned down by other countries.
Precisely, you hear time and time again of these case studies of individuals that have been rejected by 5, 6 other countries in Europe and have almost come to Britain as a last chance saloon, and ultimately have been waved through, ultimately after a very protracted process. But the idea that Starmer's going to take the Italian approach on board is absolutely pie in the sky.
Well, Giorgia Meloni was terrible far-right fascist only a couple of years ago. Apparently now she's the person to learn from and is a big ally in Europe, which is extraordinary. One bit of good news, though, is there is now a new border security commander. Well, he starts in a couple of weeks, but his name is Martin Hewitt. Wonderfully, he led Britain's enforcement of COVID lockdown laws as chair of the National Police Chiefs Council. So I'm sure he's a fabulous soul to be in charge of anything. If he's as secure about our borders as he was about letting people hug their grandmas or have a cup of coffee on a bench in a park, then of course the problem will be solved the day he starts, won't it?
Well, he's clearly competent at incarcerating people anyway, so I guess there's something in that. But yeah, I spent the last evening just watching videos of this chap. I didn't know much about him before it was announced, and he's the classic kind of police chief. He was incredibly sympathetic towards the Black Lives Matter riot.
There we go.
He's recently come out and 2019 he was lobbying Boris Johnson to adopt a pretty controversial definition of Islamophobia that's perpetuated by
we know who this man is. Yes, we'll do a little bit more interesting digging on that as well. Great to have you join us. Apologies it was so short. Robert Bates there from the Centre for Migration Control.